Hello and a very warm welcome. I'm Mark Lowen. We start with some breaking news in the last hour. Iran's military says it has again closed the Strait of Hormuz. State TV has broadcast a statement by Iran's Central Military Command saying the closure was in response to Israel's attacks on southern Lebanon, describing them as a breach of Tehran's agreement with the US. Let's bring in our Middle East correspondent John Donnison, who joins us from Jerusalem. John, not just a breakdown in the peace deal between Iran and Israel, or the ceasefire, but now potentially also in the peace deal between the US and Iran.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really significant development. We said that this deal between Iran and the United States was fragile, and here we are, the principal achievement of that memorandum of understanding. And I think one of the biggest priorities for the United States was reopening the strait, and what that's lasted a couple of days, and it's now closed. So we understand from Iranian state TV that there is now a negotiating team on the way to Switzerland, presumably to meet with the Americans. But, you know, we seem to be making some progress, but we've already taken a huge step back, and the Iranians saying this is because continuous and relentless breaches of the ceasefire in southern Lebanon, with accusing Israel of of not sticking to the agreement.
John, just worth reminding us once again of the importance of the Strait of Hormuz to global shipping and the global economy.
It's important because 20% of the world's oil and petrochemical products pass through the strait. Its closure led to a huge surge in oil prices, a surge in the price of plastics, a surge in the price of fertilizers. It meant that we've seen energy prices rise, fuel prices rise. We've seen higher inflation, therefore higher interest rates, affecting everyone paying a mortgage. So a huge impact on the global economy. And as I say, it's the main reason, I think, that Donald Trump was under such pressure to get this deal done, because all the forecasters said if the strait remained closed, we could see a global recession.
And that pressure still on Donald Trump, and reports that J.D. Vance potentially could even still be travelling to Switzerland for talks with the Iranians, even as Tehran closes that strait one more time.
Yeah, no reaction I've seen yet from the White House, but, you know, they are going to be greatly concerned. And it's going to be very interesting to see what pressure the United States can put on Israel regards to Lebanon. Because at the moment, it's difficult to see that while Israeli troops continue to occupy a large chunk of southern Lebanon, they say they maintain operational freedom to strike against Hezbollah. It's hard to see why there aren't going to be continuous breaches of a frankly non-existent ceasefire in southern Lebanon, and that is a key demand of the Iranians. So what are the Americans going to say to the Israelis after, frankly, some of the most striking criticism I've ever heard of Israel by the United States over the past week? What are they going to say to try and calm things down?
Yeah, we wait to see Donald Trump's reaction, likely to be a post later, I would have thought, on Truth Social. John Donnison in Jerusalem for the moment. Thanks very much indeed. Well, as John was saying, the Israeli military says it has been striking Hezbollah targets in South Lebanon in response to overnight attacks, despite a ceasefire announced less than 24 hours ago. Well, these are live pictures from Nabatea in southern Lebanon. Israel says more than 50 projectiles were launched at Israeli Defense Forces troops by the Iran-backed militia group in the south. Lebanon's Civil Defense Agency says ongoing Israeli strikes on the Nabatea district have killed 16 people. From Lebanon, Hugo Bashega reports.
Recent promises of peace in Lebanon have often ended in more war. A country under attack also feels under siege. And Nabatea is hammered again.
We've been here for about 10 minutes and there's been a wave of very intense Israeli airstrikes. We've just heard another one, and we can see the plumes of smoke rising from the locations that have been hit. And now there's also the sound of an Israeli drone flying in the distance.
At this hospital, the ambulances arrive but only bring the dead. They are left on the floor of the morgue, already full. These men are exhausted, counting the losses of this war, but never losing hope.
Are you tired?
أكيد تعبنا بس
Of course we are tired, but this is nothing when you save the life of a child or an elderly person. There was supposed to be a ceasefire, and many people had returned to their homes. This contributed to the increase in the number of casualties.
The bombing was in response to the killing of 4 Israeli soldiers by Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. As we leave, we see a motorbike still on fire and the risky mission to retrieve yet another body. There's now a new ceasefire, but a lasting truce remains elusive. Yesterday, we had a rare chance to see the part of Lebanon that is under Israeli occupation on a humanitarian mission of the Order of Malta. Israel says it has no intention of pulling its troops out of Lebanon. It wants to create a security zone along the border, free of Hezbollah. We saw the Israeli military presence, but were not allowed to film much of the journey. There's nothing left in Shia villages. Families who've been forced to flee may never be able to come back. The piles of rubble are now a symbol of destroyed buildings, broken promises, and lives. Hugo Bashega, BBC News, Southern Lebanon.
Let's bring in Dr. H.A. Hellier, who is a Senior Associate Fellow at the think tank RUSI. Dr. Hellier, thanks very much for your time. How serious, in your view, is this new closure of the Strait?
Thank you very much for having me. Always a pleasure. I think it is quite serious. I think, unfortunately, it's quite predictable, though. The Iranians made it clear that they would consider the continued bombing of Lebanon by the Israelis to be something that was permitted by Washington, D.C., and would be a violation of the MOU. Now, the Iranians are a very nefarious actor in the region. I don't think there should be a debate about that. But at this point, they're not wrong. The Israelis would not proceed in Lebanon unless they were sure that there wasn't going to be a price to be exacted by the Americans, that there wouldn't be leverage that would be used by the Americans. And of course, the Americans have tremendous leverage over the Israelis. And they're correct. Washington could have stopped the Israelis from proceeding this faction, has opted not to do so. And unfortunately, very predictable that the Iranians would say, well, in that case, we can consider this a violation of the MOU. The MOU says very explicitly that there has to be a ceasefire in Lebanon. And the Israelis have made it very clear that they intend to undermine this MOU. U.S. intelligence has confirmed that over the last few days. American politicians have been railing against, including Vice President Vance and Donald Trump himself, against Netanyahu and his cabinet. So I think this is quite predictable.
I mean, Israel says it was responding to incoming fire, but you are saying, are you, that you think that this is a deliberate attempt by Israel to sabotage and break apart that memorandum of understanding?
So let's be clear about two things here. One, when it comes to incoming fire where? They're talking about incoming fire, if there is any incoming fire, on Lebanese territory. That's occupied territory. That's 20% of Lebanon that the Israelis currently occupy, and they're bombing beyond that point. So that's one. Two, U.S. intelligence has already said, again, earlier this week, it was reported, that Netanyahu intends to undermine this MOU. And the vice president and the president of the United States have made it very clear that they do not agree with how the Israelis are proceeding. They've used very harsh language with regards to certain members of the Israeli cabinet, but also with regards to Netanyahu himself. I mean, Trump said in an Axios interview just a couple of days ago, we have to keep Netanyahu sane.
Well, on that, Dr. Hellier, sorry to jump in, we're a bit short of time, but I mean, do you think that Donald Trump and J.D. Vance still have Netanyahu in their pocket and still can control him? Or does this show that actually the US is once again losing control of this war?
So let's be very clear. If they want to use the leverage they have in order to ensure that Netanyahu does back off, they can do so. But this is a choice, right? The United States has tremendous leverage, I'll say it again, over the Israelis, and they refuse to use it, whether it's in terms of arms cooperation, protection of the UN, military integration. There's so many tools in the toolbox, but the United States refuses to use those tools. And the Israelis know that they won't use them, hence they proceed. If they think that the United States will use them, they will stop, they will turn back.
Dr. H.A. Hellier, we must leave it there, Senior Associate Fellow at the RUSI think tank. Thanks very much for your thoughts.
Thank you.